put it all in a pot, and then you start cutting away. You cut away until all you're left with is the most beautiful, simplest version of what that thing is, and then you make that.
Hello, I'm Carrie Gard. Welcome to Tea Time with Tech Marketing Leaders. Welcome back to the show. Today with me, I have Aaron Smillie. I think, Aaron, your last name is so appropriate because you are just have this beautiful smile that I just love.
No one takes someone with the name Smiley seriously when they're sad. They just find it fun. So,
Blessing and a curse. Blessing and a curse.
but you get a lot of old ladies at supermarkets telling you how nice your name is.
Well, it is quite the conversation starter, clearly. I mean, and the people in Guernsey in particular, like especially in the supermarkets, are just so lovely. Like when they would call me, when I would love as I'd be leaving and always wish me a happy day and say cheers. I'm like, where am I? What's happening? It's not.
It's a
Not the case
wonderful
here.
island.
It is. You grew up here, yeah?
I did, yeah, I did. I grew up here up until I was 18, and if you're an 18-year-old here, all you really do is want to escape. But then I had kids. It's what Guernsey people normally do. Then they have kids and they go, "What's better place to grow up than a 5 mile by 9 island in the middle of the channel?"
I mean, it's why we're here. My husband did the same thing. 19, pieced out, went to Jersey. Then he went to the US for a stint where he met me, had some kids, and then we were like, kids are about
It's
to go to
amazing.
school.
And do you know what? It's interesting. It's interesting because we both do a lot of remote work, and actually coming to Guernsey when I came, it was this thing where you were leaving the world and going to live on this small, and you were constrained. It was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, what's that going to be like? But that constraint has now been completely evaporated, and everybody lives wherever they want. Really, I think.
Yeah, COVID's really opened up the opportunity to do that, I think, and tech and the tech as well. I mean, we're on a 5 mile island, like you mentioned, in the middle of the channel between England and France. There's a bunch of us in terms of the Channel Islands and the Guernsey Bailiwick, but we have fiber. I don't know if every house has fiber, but like the island is fired up with fiber. It's
Yeah,
pretty
we've got great fibre,
remarkable. Um, just
but all
because
our roads are
normally,
up.
yeah, there's roadworks everywhere. Don't try to get anywhere in a hurry.
It's
Yes,
funny.
it's so true. Aaron, what's your story in terms of your career? So you left Guernsey and you went to the UK, and what happened from there?
Sure. So I left Guernsey and went. Guernsey people tend to want to leave, but then they leave to England and go to the closest place possible, which was Portsmouth. So, so you leave, but you don't leave too far, just accessible to Southampton Airport. You can get back, within 2 hours. So I went to uni there and did documentary making in my first degree, and then I did a master's in design for digital media. Um, After that, I ended up those amalgamating those two things and working for one of the main broadcasters in the UK, which was ITV, and working in regional news. Now, each region of the UK has a separate news channel for local news. Guernsey has Channel News. Down south of England, it has Meridian, and it's separated into its different regions. And I ended up working across all those regions for live television for a couple of years, which was what was called. It's old now. I'm getting old, aren't I? It was when analog was going to digital, and there was this new thing called a technical operator, a tech op, which meant that you basically vision mixed live news bulletins, and you did sound, and you did the cameras, and you did it all. Um, and I did that for a couple of years, and then this kind of department, which I'd never really heard of before, which was motion graphics, kind of presented itself. And I thought, this is amazing. You get to sit down all day, which I love sitting, which don't because I'm extremely lazy, and do graphics, which was awesome. So I ended up going for this traineeship for ITV, this kind of posh traineeship, and ended up getting a spot. and then ended up traveling around the regions, which led me to, after I left ITV, I went to, uh, basically you kind of, you go from regional news and then you go to national news. Usually that's the way journalists do it, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the way production teams do it as well. And I ended up going to Sky News for the first stint
Right.
at Sky was for 5 years. And basically, if you saw between a certain time, if you saw an over the top ridiculous graphic on Sky News, it was probably done by me or one or two other guys. We did all the real time rendered 3D systems, and I was a bit of, well, I still am a geek, but I was kind of obsessed with elections.
Mm.
Not the election coverage, the election night, the presentation, the idea of data, the kind of theatrics of it. So I kind of ended up specializing in elections and kind of big
Interesting.
data. Yeah, it was fun. And then I'll try and make it as short as possible. But then I think called Twitter came out. I thought that's cool. Now Sky isn't the first for breaking news. Twitter is. So I gave them a call. I think via LinkedIn. I think, and there was no job, but they asked to see me, which was nice, and then went there and made a bunch of stuff for them, and they gave me a job there, which was great. So I was in the brand strategy team, and I went from doing news graphics to working with brands like Visa and Adidas on leveraging the Twitter platform as it was, and then I went back to Sky, another stint at Sky News, but then went became the ridiculously titled creative controller of entertainment marketing in Sky, which was essentially doing all the creative for their TV shows. So what I mean is for TV shows on social, that is. So Game of Thrones is coming out,
Mm-hmm.
and you need a bunch of tweets that go with Game of Thrones. You also need an event going on at London Waterloo. I ran the teams that did all that stuff. Uh, and that was cool. That was cool. It was a fun gig, and then it kind of I was such a as I say I was such a geek. In my spare time, I used to work at New Scientist magazine, so making the infographics and stuff. They paid they paid really badly, but it wasn't something that I could do full time, and I
Sure.
had days off in the week, so I loved doing that. I would have done that for free. Um, and then during that, we had children, which led me to Guernsey, back to Guernsey. And we quit our jobs, my wife and I, our two sons, went to Guernsey. Uh, Two kind of big companies over here. One is Specsavers, which is their headquarters over in Guernsey, and the other it was Healthspan. And I went to work in Healthspan, and I took all my skills, my social media skills that I'd learned from working on big TV shows, and I applied them to vitamins
Yeah.
and supplements, and they didn't work at all. they,
It's a different market. It
it's a
is a
different, it's,
totally different.
yeah,
I actually think the best advertising that works in Guernsey is car wrappers. I mean, how
yeah.
often do you drive down the road and go, "Oh, I need a gardener," and then you take a picture of the van and the number, right? Like,
It really bugs me that they don't. I mean, this is the Guernsey thing, but they don't like make it big on the back. There's always this tiny thing that you're
there is,
looking
yeah.
at.
Be
Well,
like a QR code.
Healthspan ended up being like the leading online supplier of vitamins in the UK, and it was a fun gig. But from a social because I was their social media director and their brand creative director, and talking and connecting with people about stuff that people are interested in is actually really easy. Driving conversation about stuff that people are already talking about is very straightforward. Talking about stuff that people aren't, or having to find an avenue to connect with people was a really interesting thing to do. And then at the end of that, so I worked there for 3 years, and then I started. I managed some of the relationships with agencies in London, and I would kind of see how the agencies worked, and I felt like I was sitting there signing off budgets or signing off content calendars, and I would think, do you know what? I want to get back to actually making stuff and working with people.
Yes.
Um, and it was really interesting. It was kind of this. Let's start DMW Digital Motion Workshop, and let's see if I can do this. If I could take all the things that I've done, if I could take the social stuff, the creative stuff, the 3D stuff, put them together, and the journalistic stuff, put it all together and help businesses. And I've been paying the mortgage now for 4.5 years doing that.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. It's had its ups and downs. You start just before COVID, and that was interesting. But you go through those ups and downs, and I think actually what you learn when anyone does a startup, or when anyone I work with a lot of startups, is it's never as bad as you think, and it's never as good as you think. And if you can stay kind of emotionally
Calm.
intelligent's the wrong word, but yeah, I think so. I think so. Centered through that whole thing and not panic or not get overexcited, then you can kind of last.
See it through. See it
I
through.
think so. I think
Yeah,
so, and
no,
that's how we started working together.
it is. It is how we found you were in my back garden, and I was looking everywhere else for a 3D animator. And then my husband was like, "Oh, I know someone." And not only did he know somebody, but he knew someone who worked for big brands like
Mm.
Sky and Twitter and did branding for like Marvel and Adidas. So like not just I think that's what's so miraculous about Guernsey too is there's so many ways that this tiny island punches up.
Yeah,
In terms of its arts, especially. I mean, the music scene here is ridiculous. They have a full blown symphony. They have an arts performance every summer where all the street performers come out and perform, and it's incredibly well organized and really well done, and the bands are awesome.
yeah,
And then like I said, the design work here for branding is like so clever and fun and great, like technically sound. And so while I was surprised, I was also like not surprised. I was like, duh, like of course there would be this genius sitting here in my back garden who could do this work brilliantly for me. And it was um, yeah, so we did this really fun project together. But what I really loved about you working with you, Aaron, is more about the in between spaces. So Aaron and I, like once a month, would go grab coffee in this little coffee shop called the Terrace, and it's cool because it's like upstairs. You got to sort of walk, and it's got this beautiful outdoor sitting area that we in during the summers where we met, and then an inside cafe. And hours go like we would look up, we're like, oh yeah, probably like need to go home and start working now because we'll just sit there over a cup of coffee for 3 hours. But I've learned so much from you in those chats around. I mean, I've been doing art and design for my career as well. I went to school for photography. I
hmm
studied the technical side. I was dragged out of the darkroom. I was unlike you. I did not want to be sitting in front of a computer editing photos. I wanted exactly
yeah.
the opposite for as long as humanly possible. And my professors were like, "Sorry, you really need to like catch up here." And I absolutely loved photography. And then I took some design courses. But when I got into marketing, what I loved about it was I could like bring these two very technical and artistic things together. I
Mm.
could tell stories with data and build these presentations and tell a story in a way that didn't require me finding models and lighting equipment and really expensive cameras. And so it gave me this beautiful outlet. But I'm self-taught to to a degree, right? Like I've sort of, I don't want to say I've plateaued. I don't want to say I've topped out, but I've definitely plateaued. And then I met you, and it was just you gave me so many ideas that were just like uh, leveled me up in
hmm
a way
Oh,
that made
thanks.
me um, take what I already know how to do. So I went to school, like I said, I went to school for photography, and in my thesis, my professor actually sat me down like maybe 2 or 3 months before the show, and he was like, "I get it. Congratulations, you know how to take a photograph. It is technically sound, but it's missing like it, it's missing something. It's missing." He didn't say soul, but I feel like that's what he was getting at. Like it's missing that story. It's missing that thing. You need to let go. Like it's
hmm
okay. You could take a photograph. Congratulations. And I did, and I got experimental, and I these are actually from that where I took books and just
Amazing.
destroyed them in trying to tell the story of what the words were saying by messing up the pages. So I put one book in a freezer after I wet it. I tied up another book. I shot another one through water. So like I put a glass of water and then I put lighting in it, all with a 4x5 camera, and I
Amazing.
let go. And I feel like in these sessions with you, I feel like that's what you're sort of like helping me get to, of like, you know how to use the tools now, you generally know how to do layout.
Mm.
Like, let's talk about the point of view. Let's talk about the soul of what it is you're trying to accomplish. So what is it for you, Aaron? Like, when you think about, when you sit down to create anything, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a very technical piece like something for a medical company where you take literally something out of thin air and do all your medical, you know, there's no pictures of this thing and you have to create what it would
Yeah.
essentially be, to something very simple like a beautiful PowerPoint presentation and a branding element. Like, how do you get started in really understanding the point of view you want to bring to the table in that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's different in every case. But it always starts with understanding essentially what you're trying to communicate, and that's actually harder than it sounds because say you're doing a medical proposition or a science proposition or even a SaaS business proposition where someone's trying to communicate value through a selection of automated systems that's in a piece of software that's fairly abstract, or if you're trying to describe a financial piece of software that's talking about actuals versus um, projected costs, or if you're talking about DNA and how a cell goes into a motor protein kind of moves another bit of DNA around, or you know, they all they all start with having to deeply understand the subject, then simplifying it down to its core elements. Because first of all, what's the graphic trying to accomplish? What's the narrative, the beginning, middle, and end of that graphic? What's the call to action at the end? Who's the target audience? So the graphic that I would make for a generalist graphic, for a science one, for example, is going to communicate efficacy. It's going to communicate, here's a problem, here's something that's coming in that's new, which is a solution. There's a reaction somewhere, and then there's an output. And actually, most things actually follow a similar set of narratives. There's always a problem. There's always a solution. There's always a thing going on, and then there's always an outcome. And if you have that kind of core premise in your head, you're thinking, and it might not be the same for everyone, but it's like, so then how do you take the core elements of what they're trying to communicate and then distill it down to a story? So I end up putting a huge amount of work before I've got a lot of gigs, actually, because what it does do is it tests you to the client. So if I do an enormous storyboard, or I even put together some animations, and then I'm trying to describe to them what they've communicated to me, and then they come back and they say, it's 90% there, but you didn't get this thing right. This thing is super important. We need to focus on this thing. Then you can then go, brilliant. I get it now. You've exposed what you didn't know right at the beginning, and you can focus on, like, I work kind of principally, designers and creatives in animation tend to sit in two camps, really. They sit in kind of flat After Effects world, or they sit in a kind of 3D world. And there's normally one tends to enjoy one or the other. And I kind of have always sat in the 3D world. I like 3D intricate stuff, and I like a camera zooming around it, those over the top sky graphics, which I used to do all the time. I feel comfortable in that space. So when it's a case of doing a cell, well, actually, I did a Guardian course once. I was sent on a Guardian course by Sky, and they've got this kind of information graphic bit, and they were famous for doing infographics. And they said if we can't think of anything to do, we'll just put the numbers in circles, and then it'll look amazing. And it was like, and then I looked at the paper and I said, oh yeah, there's just a bunch of numbers and a bunch of circles, and it does look wicked. And you think, and so if you're doing a cell, it's effectively this kind of like weird organic blob that's moving around, and then it's got a load of other blobs in it. And then your brain goes, oh yeah, that's definitely a cell. When you actually look at a cell and you look at how they connect, it's a very different thing. And it's your it's same as logo design in a way. You take the ideas, and you take what you're trying to communicate. You put it all in a pot, and then you start cutting away. You cut away until all you're left with is the most beautiful, simplest version of what that thing is, and then you make that. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that's so helpful because we tend to over saturate or overcomplicate. One of the things that you said though that I think is really important that we don't always do because we are taught, especially in the industries that I work with, it's so hard to find the space to do the due diligence to really know the subject. And
Mm.
it's tricky too because you're when you join a new company, I'm specifically talking about like my marketing managers and directors and VPs, like when they join a new company, there's so much they have to do. They
Yeah,
have to not only learn the product, but they have to learn their team and their vendors and the audience, and then they have to somehow figure out how to put all these things together. But if you don't do the due diligence of really understanding the thing
yeah.
and the audience in which you're trying to sell the thing to,
Oh,
it,
oh my god.
right? Like, then what are we all
Mm.
doing here? And we don't give enough time to. It's to your point, like, wow, you do all that work without even getting paid. But
Oh, some of my best work never seen the light of day. It will never see the light of day, and that's okay. That is completely okay because the process was a thing, and the process you're building on layers of knowledge and and it does pay off in the end. But the people that you're talking to as a brand proposition, startups need to know who their audience is, and it's not everyone. And your heart sinks, doesn't it? I'm sure when you speak to a new client and you ask them who their audience is, who's their customer, and they say everyone. And I say, well, it's not babies, is it? So we can take babies off it. We can say, it's not people, it's not 99-year-olds who are just about, so we can start to shrink that down without sounding like I just did, but
yeah,
more
but even
positive.
like CEOs, okay, well, what kind of site? Like, oh, this is a pretty expensive ticket item, so we're probably not talking to small businesses,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay, well, we can chip away the small businesses and put them to the side. Right. So I love
and
what you're saying of like start high level, but then like really start to hone in on who actually does buy this thing already, but then what makes sense, what's logical.
well, for me, if they invest the money in creating animations, I need that to be, I need that to work for them. I need
Yeah.
that to be an effective piece of content for them. Because if they're a startup, startups have a vision. They have an amazing group of people driving that. I love working with startups, but they're effectively bleeding to death. Most startups are
Oh,
bleeding to death. Like, and so a lot of the time, I'll start with, do you know your audience? Okay, we need to do some work in that space first to kind of really hone down how we create this thing. But also, do you have any media spend for this? Like, this all a brand is a from a creative perspective or from a content perspective is a tool to get you to the next stage of your business. That might be investment, that might be customers, that might be whatever it is. It's a tool to get you there. And so, because sometimes there's a kind of what was that film with Kevin Costner, The Field of Dreams? If you create
yes,
it, they'll come, and
they will
and it's
not.
just they will not come. No, they will not. And it was really interesting. I learned that a long time. When I went back to Sky, I was given this task. They used to make these amazing infographics. They were like mobile first infographics that explain loads of stuff, and they sat on the app, the Sky app. So you'd have 3 million people would see the headlines, the top three stories, and then about 250,000 people would click onto the story and read it. When it got to the third click on the Sky News app, it was like 6 or 7 people. It was like
Wow,
no one clicked on these, no one, and it
that
just
much
opened
rough.
up. It was, yeah, it was crazy because people, that's not how the consumers used it. They looked at the headlines, they read the stories, and they
And
navigated to
moved
the
on.
next one. We understood the audience, so we stopped those, and we took that resource and moved it to some other creative. So I'm always really cognizant of a of a startup's best use of their funds. So I turn like so if you've got a media spend, your media spend should be 80%, take 20%, that's your creative, then constrain yourself within the context of that and say, well, what is it that I'm creating? But a lot of the time I go to startups and they've got it flipped the other way around. They want to spend
Oh,
80% on the creative and they want to spend 20% on get. So
that's
it's a
interesting.
fascinating journey. Do you have
Yeah.
that same experience?
I don't control the budgets on the client side, so it's hard to know exactly how their budgets are broken down. So that's really fascinating for me to know that that's generally how it goes. And it's helpful from a perspective of like, okay, what are, to ask that question and to understand, because a lot of the times they'll say, oh no, we don't have creative, right? Which is text ads, right? You're
Mm,
just doing paid search. It's like, well, to start, but then you're going to need retargeting and you're going to need some banner ads for that, and then you're going to need to branch out and do more. Like search is only going to get you so far. You got to start building the brand and the identity and getting that awareness out there. So you're going to need creative. So let's take 10-20% of your budget and carve that out, kind of put little
mm,
savings, and let's get
yeah.
you some creative going. I think is something to start considering in how we approach that, because
It's interesting because cybersecurity. I've got a cybersecurity client, and I was amazed. I love going into these businesses and kind of like getting a sense of what they do. And I was when I went in to meet the guys, they're incredible guys. They're doing really well, and to kind of like pitch them a bunch of ideas. And they kind of said to me, "Yeah, but we don't want to be too visible because we're a cybersecurity agency, and that's not something within the context of a cybersecurity brand." I was like, "Oh yeah, of course," because you don't want to start singing to everybody because you make yourself a target, or you make yourself too much than you're supposed to. And it was the first time I'd worked in that space. I thought that's really interesting. How sometimes, like for example, I'll make explainer graphics for science, explainer graphics for SaaS businesses that don't need budget. They exist maybe in the user journey of the homepage. So they
mm-hmm.
exist as part of the explaining the proposition when the budget's been spent on getting people to that page, and that's great. It's just when I get to making kind of like promotional animations that are kind of they think that organic is going to be the thing that's going to kind of and also people are people always overestimate how interested people are going to be, and it's very difficult to say to it's very difficult to people to say that it was the same with vitamins and supplements. We had loads of different vitamins and supplements, and no one was interested in some of them, and some of them, like
Yeah.
there isn't really anything to talk about vitamin D. It's the sunshine. Like it's all been said, but CBD was this new thing, and I created this Facebook group, and it had like an 80% organic engagement rate of like it was thousands of people just talking about how they were using CBD because there's a thing called claims within vitamins and supplements. It meant that you can't talk about efficacy without it being tested properly. So you can't talk about what it actually does. But people within the community that are purchasing that product can. So we built
Oh,
this Facebook,
interesting.
yeah, so they can talk about it. And if we build a kind of safe space where they can talk about it, and they did. Oh my God, they talked about it all the time. It was brilliant.
First
But
party data right there. I mean, not that you could use
yeah,
it like, but but the validation of it, right? To say like, this is what's
one,
happening, and then to invite people then to be able to come be part of that is uh, community is coming. I don't know when you did that Facebook group, but community is definitely like hot button to press right now. And I think people are trying to figure out how to do it and do it well. And that's a wonderful example of like bringing folks together who are really passionate about a thing and giving them space to be able to talk about it when they normally can't.
So I did a ton of Facebook groups to varying success. Some of them, so driving engagement on Facebook groups is almost impossible. You can't build the engagement. If people want to engage in that space, they'll find you, and you can kind of give them a signpost and say, "Hey, here we're talking about it," and they'll come. And that's what we did because I set up a menopause group as well. I mean, I wasn't visible on the group because it was a safe space for women, and it was a safe space to communicate the journey of menopause. And so one of my team was the ones that looked after it. And I thought it was going to do the same as the CBD, but actually there are some amazing groups for menopause. Mine wasn't it.
Oh,
And
yeah, the competition piece is hard.
well, it's not even. It was kind of like people were actively at the time. People are more open about menopause now, but at the time, it felt like it was a struggle to get people to communicate and to be there. Whereas people have done it way better than I did. But the CBD one worked because everyone felt like what we should do in regard to groups is facilitate a space where everyone feels safe to communicate, I suppose, authentically about the thing they want to communicate without fear of reprisal or ridicule. And I spent an enormous amount of time just getting rid of people. They'd have to sign. They'd have to be allowed in the group,
Yep.
and if they kind of broke the rules,
Yep. Goodbye.
like they were just gone. Yeah, because the minute that trust within a group is
Mm-hmm.
broken, like it's
Yeah.
game over, really.
I remember this actually happened. I was part of a mom's group many years ago before
Mm,
COVID. Oh no, it was during COVID, is when the Black Lives Matter event happened with George Floyd, and all the women broke out wanting to talk about it, and the woman who ran the group shut it down. And she's like, "We will not be talking about that here." And I was like,
yeah,
"You have just alienated." Like, I don't know what her drop off was, but I was certainly one of them. And I
yeah,
was like, "You did not listen to what people were saying. It was very much, what do we do about this? And how do we help each other? And what needs to happen here? And how
yeah,
do we fix this?" It wasn't like a barrage of negativity. It was very much like coming from a place of wanting to do something about it. And she
yeah.
just like didn't know what to do with it and shut it down. I was like, sorry, like,
It's
oh, you gotta
it's
listen.
listening like that is a tough thing because yeah, you can misinterpret the context of a conversation. You can and I mean, I remember I looked. I had the the team. Hellspan had a team in Gosport that answered the social media posts. They were amazing, and we would get a mixture, and I'm sure they still do, a mixture of people, both with queries in regard to their orders, but also conversations about efficacy and conversation. There's a nuance to conversations, and you don't necessarily understand the biases and the premises of which people are coming to at these groups. So yeah, I haven't done. I mean, I'm off Facebook now. I left Facebook, and I shut down. I have LinkedIn, and all the rest of my personal accounts are gone. Um, and so I went from like working at Twitter, working heavily in social, to just
Quitting.
kind of shutting it all down. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't blame
yeah,
you. Yeah, I quit Facebook. I'm still on Instagram because I just love the picture. Like, it's
yeah.
the photographer in me. And LinkedIn, I don't go near X with a 10-foot pole if I can help it. It's just so negative and
Yeah,
condescending and hurtful that I'm just like, nope. Um, so I don't need to be there. But I think this all comes back to the point where we've been making through this whole show naturally, which is wonderful. I love when that happens. Thank you for doing my job for me. Is around point of view, right? Like, we're talking about the elements of having a point of view, from really understanding the topic
yeah.
deeply. I actually work with a client right now who's actually my coach. So I'm helping him cultivate his newsletters and his social media, and I can write from a place of a first draft because then he goes back over it to get it into his voice. But like I can write from a place of understanding because I'm living
Mhm.
it. I'm living the experience of him being my coach, and so it's so easy for me to talk about the power of it and his coaching techniques because I literally went through it.
Mhm.
And so it's hard when you're not a cybersecurity practitioner then going into the marketing world. Like those things do not compute, right? So
Yeah.
then trying to market something that's hard to understand deeply when you're not given the space to understand it deeply, um, I, I think there's opportunity for us to do better in giving our marketers a chance to really sit with the knowing.
Just cybersecurity, it was a funny one. When I worked with us, and I still work with them. I thought of cybersecurity as the thing that you have on your computer, which is an antivirus thing.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then I
Mm-hmm.
learned, and that is actually a narrative which kind of sits at this kind of base level of people's kind of thoughts on it. And actually, a lot of how many CEOs see it, they see it as an IT problem. They see it as a thing that happens in an update. Whereas when I started working with the guys, it was like, understanding deeply that it's this human thing. And actually, a lot of cybersecurity breaches happen between humans. They happen through just leaving stuff out. They happen with a phone call. They happen in these kind of moments. And it was one
Same
thing
here.
I love about working with the kind of startups. I kind of tried to simplify my proposition down kind of halfway through because I was trying to do it all. And I simplified it down to working with smart people on cool things. And that was it. If it was smart people and it was cool things, I'd want to be part of it. And that's worked really well because the clients I have and the clients I work with all have something to say. And social media, forgive me, cybersecurity guys, watching them grow, watching that business grow, and for your team, having to do all the content and all the strategy and all the marketing that they do, as well as understand deeply the expertise of those people, is actually a lot to ask for, isn't it? But if you can get kind of halfway there, if you can
Yeah.
communicate it from a journalistic perspective, so you understand the
Oh, yeah,
periphery,
that's fun.
that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
it's if you can understand the hooks, the ability to kind of navigate to gain the interest, and then
Mm-hmm.
those people going into the deeper knowledge who want to, if you can get them in, and that's how much
Yeah.
they need to know. I think.
Well, I think for my team, the beauty of being, and I love it's similar for you too, right? So your focus, while it's working with very cool people who have something to say, you've also become sort of an expert in sort of the medical area, right? Like you've niched down even further to say, I want to truly understand some of these medical things.
Mm,
And to become somewhat of an expert in that is really powerful because it's an easy yes when you show up to the front door of a healthcare company to say, I want to bring what you do to life, and here's my
yeah,
expertise in it, and here's my experience in it, and I can speak to it the way that you speak to it because I understand it deeply. And so for us, we've done something similar where it's like, if we are going into the cybersecurity space, we cannot do it willy nilly. We have to truly understand what all of these acronyms are, what they do, what they mean, and the audiences that they contribute to. And so we haven't cracked the code on all of them because we haven't had a chance to work across all of them. There's a lot now, and
yeah,
there's more coming as new industries pop up, new categories pop up. But even just doing, sitting in some of those very specific acronyms to really understand the, endpoint security or XDR or, name it. And then that not just the VP or the CISO that's going to sign off on it, but the practitioner. And
mm,
most importantly, what their day to day, it's going back to what you said earlier, their day to day problems are, right? We don't need to necessarily understand how all the products work in the nitty gritty, but what is in their way that's making
mm.
their jobs harder than they need to be? And how can we unblock them, right? Like, that at the end of the day is where like the rubber meets the road for my team and the power of what I think it's so true. You're right. There's a lot to unpack in trying to understand any industry, but if you can really narrow down to knowing roughly what the product solves, the audience that it's
Yeah.
for, and the problems in their way, like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a point of view right there. So, where do you take that? How do you then take this concept of like understanding those three things and then making a visual out of it that's compelling and but not oversimplified and also not too complex? You do, I don't know how you do it, honestly, but you do
It's
those
it's
two
fu-
things.
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think so. What's I mean, I said it before. What's strange about the very small is it's very similar to the very big. So, when you go very large, the galaxies, it's all a bunch of circles and a bunch of things moving around. And then when you go very small, it's all kind of the same. And those two things are cool because I'm a big sci-fi geek. So I kind of love those spaces. But it's so how do you get into that space without being patronizing? Because what you want to do is you want like it's like those in movies where everybody goes, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Well, yeah, I mean the film meant for you to know. It gave you a series of things and made you feel smart and you feel great. And I think in regard to graphics, you want the person who's watched it to feel smart at the end. You don't want them to feel patronized. You don't want them to feel like they've been shown this kind of this graphic they might have been shown when they were 5 that kind of goes through a series of steps. You want them to feel like they've been sucked into to a small world and they've been taken on this journey and they're like, I totally get that. And it's and I always kind of think if I get it, and sometimes I don't. I mean, there's a couple of times where I've listened to because scientists. Part of my job is to distill down a very very smart person's knowledge into something that I can understand.
Yeah,
and
true.
and if I can't, and if you fake it, and people do, if you fake it, if you're having a conversation with a very smart person, a scientist, a medical researcher, and they're explaining to you what this thing is, and if you sit there and you go, yep, yep, okay, yep, and then you go off, and you've not through awkwardness or through a feeling that you just want to kind of like nod and say you don't want to feel bad.
Yeah.
So, but then it's about building a script so that the visuals could be dynamic, but also simply you can create simplicity and complexity. So imagine a cell, but there's this beautiful refraction in regard to photography you were talking about. It's backlit beautifully. It's sitting within a space that feels real, um, and the text itself is giving you something more complex. So the balance of the text, you're trying to understand the text, but the visuals are quite simple. It's very
Mm.
sometimes that relation, if you're showing too much in the visuals and the text is too complicated as well,
You lose
you'll
people.
you'll lose people. And it's the same way if it's too simple.
Mm.
And I think it's a balance. I think it's a real balance. And what's interesting is how much people, when they see images, how much they believe them. And so working on elections was an interesting one, which was I used to do this talk about infographics and elections and how reality can be warped based on the way you construct a narrative visually. And one of those things with election coming up, one of those things was first past the post. You'll see an election going on, you'll have two numbers going up, and there'll be a line, and whoever crosses that number, whoever crosses that line wins. Well, what's happened there is that journalist in a newsroom has created a fictitious narrative. They've created a conceit, which is that there is a race going on based
Mm.
on input data. But that race is only exists because elections are being called at different places. And that race would have looked completely different if those people had got their data in at different times. So it's a fiction. That race that you're seeing is a construct of how the data comes into the building, not the reality of the situation. And what's interesting about that is that's what happened in the last Donald Trump election, that they were doing this race, but votes were late in an area,
Mm-hmm.
so he
Yep.
contested it. And the reason I talk about this is that when you build narratives, when you build visual narratives, you've got to be kind of super clear that you're not telling a story that doesn't exist. And that's the kind of simple, that's the simplicity. Does that make sense?
Yes. No, and that's the problem with data, right? Is that because there's so much of it, you can really construct whatever story you want
Mm,
based off of what you're seeing versus what's actually happening. I love going down the rabbit hole, right? And never taking data at face value and continuing to ask why, but why? Why is this happening? And why is this being caused? And what's doing this? And why? Because I want to get to the true understanding of what's happening.
mm,
And and being able to tell a true story, not just a well, the data's. This actually just happened with one of our team with our team. When you looked at the top line data of for SEO of rankings, and you just looked at the whole list and rankings, they didn't really move. They actually, and they even kind of went down a little bit.
mm-hmm.
But actually, what happened was we honed in by product on specific keywords that we needed to move to get more volume within those products. And we had massive wins, but it was buried
Yeah,
in the top line, right? If you just take that top line, then it looks like, yeah, nothing happened. It's like, right, but actually, if you look at that top line, then you dig into where the wins happen, and then you go even further down funnel and look at sessions and engagement, those went up. So rankings came down, but there was momentum on the back half, which is what you want. So
yeah,
yeah, it really you really do need to dig in and not take data at face value and be able to tell that story in the way of exactly what we're talking about. I think is so powerful. We don't do it enough because we feel like we have to pack slides so heavily, right? So it's like, how can you start high level, right? We'll
yeah,
show the slide with the rankings that has everything showing that nothing actually happened. And then we're going to bring you in and we're going to show you, okay, here were the wins that we wanted. And here's what we got. And thanks to that, here's how we're seeing it net out over here. And here's how we're going to continue to capitalize on that. And that's the outcome, right? So we're bringing them on this journey deeper through that lens. And it's those windows that you're so great at making that how that to your point, like you want to take somebody and bring them in and show them the messy
yeah.
middle and then pop them out the other side of like it's all good and we're okay. And if we're not okay, here's what we're going to do about not being okay. And it's
What you said there is really interesting because it's kind of like dawned on me that when we're talking about funnel and you're talking about what phase someone's in within that is so important as well. You know, if it's an awareness piece and you're just trying to get people to understand what it is, then it's a broad brushstroke, isn't it? And then,
mm-hmm.
you know, when you're diving down, you know, you end up in these kind of quite dry analytical places that only that 1%, that 2% really are interested in. And that can be something which is the scientist has created. It's the slides that they've created. We've got them there. You know,
Yeah.
we found those people. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I love data and creating, you know, distilling it down to a narrative. But usually, it's like it's 3 points of data. It's this plus this doesn't just equal this because there's some other. You know, it's all contextual, and that was the thing with
Mm-hmm.
elections. Why I loved them so much because you could build out narratives, and it was a clean set of data. I didn't like data from social. Uh, when it was the poor man's, we'd go around in the room or on the business I worked at, and you'd have like direct email getting all the love, and you would have you would go through all the different bits, and then
A
social, and it
sentiment.
would be like it'd be like brand sentiment. I'd had this amount of, and it was just I'd be going through my numbers, and it was because I think in a marketing team, which I did love working in marketing teams, and I love the kind of the energy that exists in both creative teams and marketing teams. But everyone's talking about attribution, and if it's last click or if
The
it's kind of are
golden.
you part of that? Yeah, and social was never there, I mean, I remember doing. There was a phase. I don't know. I haven't done social now for a while, but it was a big influencer phase, and
Mm-hmm.
then there
It's
was a
come back.
massive. Yeah, I mean, there was a massive backlash, wasn't there, about like influencers on Instagram and how much of their engagement was real.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I remember doing a few influencer campaigns right at the beginning, and they were just so off the mark. The agency that we worked with got us these groups of people, and we were trying to sell. I think they were like chocolate bars, and it was just ridiculous. I mean, at the
Yeah.
how these people, they got us,
We're not.
they
It
got
wasn't
us reach.
authentic. Yeah, I think it's shifting now. Where yeah, I think it's shifting now. Where when we're talking about influencers, it's people who are actually living and breathing the thing, and it's in a
Yeah,
more authentic space. So influencer and community is definitely coming back in an interesting, sort of learned from our past sort of way, which is helpful. Gosh, Aaron, I could talk to you. You know this. I could talk to you all day. But this conversation, I think, in terms of, and all of the little roads we went down, is so powerful in terms of reminding us of having that clear point of view, understanding our audience, understanding their pain, and then being able to tell that story in the data, in the contextual way that brings them from that high level down into what the thing is, and out the end that makes them feel like, okay, I get it, and you're solving my problem, and I'm here for it. Let's go, right? Like, it's
yeah.
hard to do. It's hard to do well, but when you can do the upfront work of really sitting with those things, you can get there, and it's pretty. Oh, you're such a testament to the magic that comes
Oh, I
out the
don't
other
know.
end. Aaron, where can people see your work? We've talked so much about it. I'm sure they're on the edge of their seats, just being like, I want to see
Oh,
what he does. Where can they
so
find you?
head over to. I've made it short. Digital Motion Workshop was a terrible name because it's very long, and I wish I'd called it something shorter. So I abbreviated it to DNW. So DNW.GG. GG is
Let's see.
Guernsey's. I mean, it's used around the world, isn't it, for good games? So it's for gamers and stuff.
It's true.
But that's what I mean. It's good, but yeah. So
Okay,
DNW.GG.
GG.
That's way shorter than my ridiculously long title. Yeah,
Yeah.
go and have a
Yes,
look.
head on over
Go and have a
there.
look.
Head check it out. We'd love to hear your feedback in the comments of what you thought. And if you have any questions for Aaron or want to know more about 3D animation and storytelling, definitely hit him up. LinkedIn, Aaron, or on your website. What's best?
Yeah, yeah. LinkedIn,
Either.
LinkedIn messaging on LinkedIn is great. I still use LinkedIn. It's good. It's still a good place, kind of.
I
This
mean,
this island's great. It's great to get off it as well. I think the winter here. You don't know weather until you've lived on an island. I think. Is that safe to
certainly.
say?
Yeah. No. And especially the last few years have been particularly
Yeah,
interesting. Oh, we had
great.
windstorms up to recently at 80 miles an hour
Yeah,
windstorms. It was wild. It's wild. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the sunshine for sure. Um, awesome. Well, thank you, Aaron, and thank you to those who
great.
hung out with us and listened and joined in our journey. We appreciate you. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. This episode was brought to you by MKG Marketing, the digital marketing agency that helps complex brands like cybersecurity and data management platforms and all those brands that have something hard to say to a hard audience, like the CISOs, developers, and even ourselves, marketers, are the toughest audience to market to, let me tell you. We are here to support you with SEO, digital ads, and analytics. This episode was hosted by me, Carrie Gard, CEO and co-founder of MKG Marketing. And if you want to be a guest, hang out with me, DM me. Let's have you on the show. I'd love to have you. Thank you again.
Thank you.